Chevreuse, the Overlord, is finally back at last. So today, I thought it'd be cool to evaluate her current meta position. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Of course, we should open by evaluating Chevreuse's kit feel. I'll evaluate her performance in the three following teams: Coriander Overload, Raiden Overload, Arlecchino Overload, and as an on-field Pyro DPS of C6 Bennett. To start with Clorox, she feels really solid in this team. This is for a couple of reasons. She acts as a Bennett replacement in the team as she provides a decent amount of attack percent based on her max HP after using her hold skill. This is cool because Coriander can't really take good advantage of Bennett most of the time due to her extremely movement heavy kit. Or at least not without it feeling extremely awkward to play. Chevreuse absolves such issues. Plus, the buffs that Chevreuse provides are really good, even at C0. If we take a look at a shiny C0 Chevreuse, with the buffs that are present in her base kit and nothing more, you're getting a 40% res shred for Pyro and Electro. Mind you, that is equal to 4VV's res shred. And we all know how crazy that buff is. Plus, that's not all. There's also the meaty attack buff that I mentioned earlier, and there's also her ability to hold 4P Song of Days Past for even more effective team buffing. We haven't even touched on her insane C6, but we'll get there. Alright, that's all fine and dandy, but why are these qualities so great for Clorox in particular? Well, first off, a greater emphasis on Clorian's damage gives her some multi-wave. This is because the quality buffs will allow her burst to nuke down an enemy wave, then allowing her normal attack string to shoot down another enemy wave. Overload Clorian is more AoE friendly on the whole compared to Aggravate Clorian as well, thanks to Chevreuse. This is because the Purple Cop's aggro team focuses in on Fischl, who is single target, whereas Overload Clorian has major AoE players such as Xiangling for instance. Of course, Fischl is still usable within Coriander aggro teams, but the main point is that the team isn't centric around the crazy girl single target A4 procs. This team is extremely impressive for the Cop duo, and you'll feel its full strength even if you only have a base C0 Chevreuse. She truly feels splendid in this team. As for Raiden Overload teams, she feels excellent here too. For those of you who like to play Raiden Hyper, Chevreuse is pretty much best described as a Kazuha replacement. You swap out the Maple Twink for the Burger King Cop and then let loose. Kazuha provides damage bonus percent and 4VV plus grouping, whereas you get VV inbuilt within a C0 Chevreuse's kit, an attack percent buff, Song of Days Past, and if you have C6, then you're still getting damage bonus percent. And if you're lacking in AoE, you can swap Bennett out for Xiangling in this team for greater AoE. The Chef will still be getting buffed formidably even without Bennett, and if you feel like you're gonna face battering concerns, stick your Chevreuse on a Favlance. Plus, you'd usually rather play Xiangling here anyway so that you can have more consistent power application to trigger more consistent overloads. Additionally, Xiangling can apply enough pyro to maintain a 100% uptime on Chevreuse's res shred. It's also worth mentioning that Chevreuse was able to capitalize on Raiden's teams very easily for a reason. Overload has always been a part of the Shogun's teams, but never by any sort of choice. Most of the time, Overload was more of a curse if anything, because of how it knocked away smaller mobs and barely contributed anything to the team. Yet when the Red Cop came along, she gave some actual purpose to the reaction that was already present in the team. This is why their synergy feels so natural. I've achieved some of my highest initial slash nukes on Raiden when playing her with Chevreuse. These two are genuinely goated together, and if you're a Raiden Shogun fan, then please don't sleep on using Chevreuse in her teams. When it comes to Arlecchino Overload, I think the team plays decently, but I do far prefer Vaporize for Arla. This team is a pretty nice alternative use, and it will still definitely feel strong for her. All the amazing qualities that Chevreuse can provide still apply. The case is simply that Arla's pyro numbers are so absurdly high that she'd rather take the multiplicative Vaporize reaction to enhance said numbers. Nonetheless, this team does fine, and it's a formidable alternative Arla choice if your Yolan or Constellated Farina were already in use on the other half. Then for the most niche use of this lot, DPS Chevreuse. I'm pretty miffed that Hydro Talpa just left the Abyss, because that's where this team shines best. C6 Bennett DPS Chevreuse shines wonderfully against Talpa and other Hydro-infused enemies. You'd honestly be surprised at how well this team performs in said scenarios. In all other instances, you should just play an Electro or Pyro Overload DPS at the front, it'll do better, but this is still a fun thing you can try that works to a surprising degree of effect. Chevreuse really is a cool character to play. Her teams are super unique, yet still highly competent. She quite literally saved Overload, turning it from something completely worthless to an actually desirable reaction. I also think she's amazing in theater, as we've seen in past seasons, where she had the chance to thrive in a Pyro-Electro curated environment. She's amazing against pretty much any form of content and manages to achieve the perfect balance of not being a necessity by any means, but still opening some very unique playstyles that can clear the Abyss more than competently. I truly do believe that Chevreuse is an insane unit out of the box at C0, but her Constellations are an undeniable upgrade to your already fantastic kit, so let's have a look, why don't we? This is a pretty great C1. It improves the energy economy for your team, and considering how often characters like Shangling are featured in these comps, this buff is actually quite delicious. Lovely. The main utility of our C2 is extra power application, not so much for damage itself. This allows for more consistent overload triggers, so no complaints from me here. Her C3's main quality is improving her healing. Good for survivability, nothing much else to add here other than considering that it's pretty feasible that you're going to be playing Bennetless teams with her, having the additional healing to compensate for the loss of his is pretty cool. Her C4 is neat, since it places more importance on using her burst, as it refreshes the cooldown of Chevreuse's hold skill. Her buff up time is already quite good, so you're not going to be using this in most of Chevreuse's teams, where she acts as a supportive option most of the time. The only thing you'd want more uptime on is her 6-second A1, but since the damage windows for the DPSs that Chevreuse supports tend to typically be about 10 seconds plus, this C4 wouldn't help much because she needs field time to reactivate her A1. This is better for a DPS Chevreuse because you're able to proc a third hold skill with her, and let me tell you, it actually becomes quite a significant portion of her damage output once you get this, because the multipliers on her hold skill are actually quite meaty. This C5 is kinda useless, unless you're playing her as a DPS. Very cool, I think. This C6 is what really solidifies her role as a Kazuha replacement for Electro DPSs. She can give your team up to 60% damage bonus, so 20% more damage bonus than a 1000 DM Kazuha. The additional heals are also pretty wacky, but I'm wanting to emphasize the damage bonus here. Even just a 20% on its own would be pretty nuts, but this? Man, they seriously knocked it out of the park with this C6. It's undeniably a big carrot on the stick to try get people pulling for her Constellations. With that being said, you will still be clearing the Abyss just fine with a C0 Chevreuse by your side. Do not get baited by this carrot on a stick, no matter how delicious said carrot may look. Don't pull on a banner for 4-star Constellations, unless you want the limited 5-star. I got 3 copies of Xian Yun, I think 2 Jeans and 2 Nahitas before I got my C0 Farzan up to C6. Let that be a warning to you. Great Constellations, but as always, prioritize your favorite 5 stars first. When it comes to Chevreuse's meta history, there isn't much to say right now because of how recent the character is. Okay, to be fair, she came out in 4.3 and we're in 5.0 right now. If we look at it from a human time perspective, then she's been out for quite a while. But if you look at it from a Genshin perspective, then not that much time has passed. Especially considering that the current Kinich and Raiden banners are this Red Cop's second time officially being on limited banners. When it comes to Chevreuse's history, when she came out, people were pretty quick to realize how nuts she was for Raiden. She was received quite positively on release, and people found it interesting that she took advantage of a previously worthless reaction. Being a Kazuha upgrade for the specific team archetype in particular was a great cause for interest, and she felt like a rather successful experiment. A pretty fun unit to play around with, who allows Raiden to commit even more massive nukes to boot. Eventually, Arlecchino rolled around and she found herself having another main use case. She performed pretty well in this team and it was a relatively easy to play comp. However, this got quickly overshadowed by Arla Vape, a much stronger Arla team when discussing the Knave's personal numbers. I'd say that Chloriander is where Chevreuse finally had her true time to shine. She is incredible with this unit, and since the Purple Cop is a strong character, supporting her to such an excellent extent was quite the feat indeed. Personally, at first I underrated this synergy, but over time as I played it more and witnessed more gameplay of it, I was able to understand how genuinely strong this team is. All 3 of her main use cases are with quite popular characters, so I would say that Chevreuse was able to make a decent splash in the Genshin meta. Cut to current day, and because of said synergies of beloved units, she's very demanded. Pretty much every banner that went by had people scratching their heads asking when the next Chevreuse banner would be. Like I said, this character is very recent in gacha game time. The recent Notline characters that came out have nothing to do with her, so her current day meta is pretty much the same as her meta history. She hasn't changed much over time, because she simply hasn't had the time to change over time. I would say that her current best use case is with Chloriander. Otherwise, I don't think there's much else to add here other than she is still a very good 4-star. When it comes to Chevreuse's overall meta standing, I think the best way to describe her is that she is a character that offers an excellent alternative. She is unique, yet she is also more than viable. It's not copium to use her, in fact her teams are quite strong, and you can definitely justify using her. Sure, she is not going to be the best choice for Arlecchino, and perhaps you'd rather play Raiden Double Hydro, but her other options are still there, and they are still good. She achieves a certain purpose. Something like Dehydro Raiden is to battery and drive 2 strong Hydros, whereas somebody using Chevreuse with the Shogun has the specific goal of making the Electro Archon do as much personal damage as she possibly can. It's worth pointing out that new players start with nothing. Someone just starting the game and seeing both Raiden and Chevreuse on banners is gonna have a field day, because those 2 are more than capable of clearing the Abyss. She opens a new option for people to clear endgame content with. She really achieved what a niche support should be. Niche, but fantastic in said head niche. It's also extremely refreshing that she's not C6 locked. She's still more of a morph using a C0, emphasizing both my point about new players and my point about not pulling on banners that you don't want to pull on. Seriously, please don't do that. Chevreuse is truly something. It's nice to see her back on banners, and I do hope that Hoyo isn't going to be stingy with her banner placement in the future. She's super strong at what she does, was an absolute game changer, and genuinely offers a more unique experience. I do quite like how this character plays, and I do think she added some life into this vaporized Raiden meta of ours. No matter what, it always heads back to Vape or Hydro. Hopefully this video was able to update you on Chevreuse's current status in the Genshin Impact meta. This has been Juice, signing out, and can someone tell me what those cones are? They're fried potatoes, okay, but what actually are they, as in the food name? Asking for a friend, of course.